All right, this is the last video for the virtual idea test lab. This is the video that you should watch before the last session. You should be receiving this on Friday. And this should be something that you should be watching to understand where you came from and what some next steps for you might be. So I'm going to do one final PowerPoint, one final death by PowerPoint for you folks. And then this is something you can refer to later as you kind of move forward and then kind of understand about what you're going to be doing with your company and what you decide to do with it. So give me a minute, I'm going to turn over to that. All righty, so let's get right into it. So everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? This is so great from Mike Tyson. But the premise is, look, we've gone through this program and we can spend a lot of time building plans. And that's really helpful because it gives us some kind of metrics to gauge yourself against, but to remember that everything is about adaptation, right? A lot about startups and entrepreneurship is that there are lots of these unseen bumps, and that's the risk that you take when you go forward. The idea is to minimize those number of bumps that you run into, right? So that's why we've done all of this stuff beforehand to de-risk you, to remove as much risk as possible. But remember that these still things might happen. So being aware and having a plan essentially is as good as you can do. So bringing it all together. So what does that mean? Well, I think it's important for us to kind of look back on what we've done or what you've all done to kind of take really some stock in what you've done up until this point. I think it's important because you've done a lot. This has been a burnout kind of program, not a burnout, but you've done something in 4 weeks, right? So in 4 weeks, you've done more than most people will probably get together to do in about a year or two. So in 4 weeks, what you've done is you have created a list of assumptions, right? These assumptions are about you, your customer, their problems, and what potential things that they might need to see, right, from a potential product or service. So you're starting with the foundation, right? You're getting the foundations and started to test them. How did you do that? Well, you started testing them by doing a number of interviews. So by this point, everyone should have done at least 40 interviews. So that's 40 data points, essentially, where people can understand more about their customers. So understanding what their needs are, what their desires might be, what problems they have, and confirming or validating or invalidating their previous assumptions. What's great about doing interviews is that you're building that rapport, right? So now you have 40 people, maybe loosely, but you have 40 people now potentially in a network that you can talk to and reach out to if you've done it right. Then you've taken those interviews and you start creating customer characteristics. So that's the sticky note exercise. So finding all of that information and aggregating it and then processing it to create personas or to find out who this customer is or who these customers are in aggregate, right? And when we talk about who they are, it's not about demographics necessarily, but it's more about habits, behaviors, and beliefs. You've created a problem statement or a job to be done. Again, this comes from foundational understanding of what your customers' problems are and what they're trying to solve, and then what are the hurdles that are stopping them from doing that. And for you folks, that is the crux of what you're trying to solve. You've done some assessments about your competition, right? Who are they? What are they doing? How are they better or worse? What are ways that you can work around them or improve beyond them? And finally, your value proposition. So what is the value that you bring to your customer through a product or service that you're offering? So the next thing that we're going to talk about is smoke screens and MVPs, or minimum viable products. So for many of you, that this will probably be the next logical step. So you've done some customer discovery. That is something that will never end. It'll modify and change over time about how you do it, but it's always important to keep in touch with your customers and keep tabs on them and keep having those conversations, because from there, you'll find new ideas to spin out stuff. So before you get there, though, it's time to do smoke screens before starting to spin out new things. So the smoke screen is essentially an opportunity for you to test some things. So remembering back to the customer development process, right? So we are in the search section, not in execution. The part of the search is about, does my solution address a problem? If so, great. If not, I need to go back and see if I can identify a real problem. So smoke screens are there to help identify a real problem. So they're that part of that circular motion. And they're useful for a lot of things. One, they're useful for testing to see if people are actually interested, right? Do they care? If so, great. If not, why not? The second part would be an MVP. So let's say your smoke screen is successful. Awesome. You get 10 million people to sign up. Awesome. But a smoke screen is only a smoke screen. It doesn't deliver any value. And so an MVP is an opportunity for you to create something that actually gives value to your customers. And that's when you start breaking out of the search phase and moving into execution. So smoke screens helping to test the potential of your solution without developing it or providing value to the customer. For example, signing up for a beta, right? So this is a lot of things. So this could be a landing page of people signing up where they can put their email, right? Giving you that something, or signing up on a waiver form, submitting that form. Or this could be something where even as simple as people tearing off tabs on the bottom of a piece of paper, right? The idea is that you're trying to get people to buy in, give you a low calorie something, right? So that could be a phone number, it could be a email, it could be anything really, but that isn't necessarily financial transaction. So it could be something, a promise to call you, right? Or something like that. You're asking for someone to commit to you in some capacity, but you're not delivering any value. You're just saying, this is what I'm planning on doing. Let me know if you're interested. So great smoke screen. So Dropbox is probably the quintessential example. So what they did was basically the founder was having a lot of time forgetting USBs at class. And so they're trying to figure out how they could get their data and their files on one computer, essentially, or being able to access them from one computer. So they announced a video with a demo, right? So with the interesting part, though, the demo software that they created wasn't actually functional. It was just some fancy video editing work they did, but it was a demonstration of what the technology could do. And the benefit of that was they didn't have to build anything. They didn't spend 6 to 10 months and $20,000 building software, hiring people. It was just clever video editing that they had access to the video because of school. So for you folks, think about something you can do with your idea that is small. It's a small something, but that conveys your idea and what you plan on doing, but you don't actually have to build it, right? So for them, what they did was they put this on actually a website called Dig. If anyone is probably over 30, you may know what Dig is. But Dig is basically a website. It is kind of akin to Reddit in some capacity, but basically people could upvote or downvote. And Dropbox represented the community that this person was in. So they submitted it there, put it into a series of chats, and then basically within a week or so, they went from 5,000 people on the waiting list to 75,000 people. And the reason that's important is that they were then able to take that list of 75,000 people and say, hey, investors, we're interested in doing this. This is our potential wait list. Will you support this? Right? That was an opportunity for them to do that. That might happen with banks or something else, but it's a commitment from somebody to move forward. Another smokescreen is a company called Buffer. So Buffer essentially will queue up messages. It's kind of like Hootsuite in some capacity, where you can queue up and basically set a list for social media. And what they did was they had this here. So it says tweet more consistently with Buffer, choose times to tweet, add tweets to your buffer, plans and pricing, right? They would take you to plans and pricing. You'd click on it. And then it would say, oh, you caught us too early. You get just to the point of putting in your credit card, and it would tell you, we're not ready yet. And they wouldn't take your credit card. The important part of this is once you start taking money, you step out of totally legal and free and no worries smokescreen testing to there might be some legal ramifications. I'm not a lawyer, but something to look into about once you start taking money, figuring out how that works. An MVP is the smallest possible group of features that will work as a standalone product while still solving at least the core problems and demonstrating the product's value, right? The MVP is the smallest thing that brings value. So I think the great example is we have one later here. So MVPs forces us to test our assumptions by putting products in the market. People really get obsessed with the idea of shipping, right? But that's so important. Shipping product. It has to just be sent. It can't be perfect. Done is better than perfect. And people get caught up in analysis paralysis and making it a quote perfect product. And by the time they get it out there, either the people have moved on or someone else has come in and usurped you. This is also an opportunity to learn with minimal effort, right? So it's important to note that it's not a half-assed product. It's not broken. It still provides value, but it's not the full value that you would envision it to do. I really love this example. So when people start thinking about their prototype, right, or the minimum viable product, many people think about what they want in their head. They think about their end vision, and then they think about the pieces getting there, but they don't think about the value that's being brought to them. They don't think about the smallest component. So when people think about it, they think about, all right, I'm going to build a car, and then, well, I need a wheel first, right? And then I need this frame, and then they build this build a cathedral, essentially. They build a cathedral in their minds, but they're not bringing value until that cathedral is built, metaphorically. Versus the way people should be thinking about it is instead understanding the value. So if we're talking about cars, it's oftentimes getting people from A to B quickly, right? So if people are in a world full of people who can only walk and people want to get there faster and there are roads, some people might come up with a car, the top version. You might think about all the pieces along the way, but the person on the bottom, the team on the bottom that develops a skateboard first, right? It's something that's a little bit better than walking. It's slightly faster. It does all of these things that can get them from A to B quickly, right? It is not perfect. It's not the end goal that they've probably envisioned. However, it is something that can solve a need quickly. Then they scale up. All right, the scooter is a little bit better because it gets you more control, and a bike because you can go way faster and you can pedal in continuous movement, and then a motorbike because you don't have to pedal at all, and then moving to a vehicle, right? Moving to a full vehicle, you're encased, so when it's raining, you get protected from all those things. They may very well have had that vision of the final car when they started, but it's being able to move between the vision and then what needs to get done today and being able to toggle back and forth very quickly between those two, that frame of mind, that is really what helps entrepreneurs move forward. So doing something like this. So what in your model is the question, can you be done like this? Does it all have to be done giant scale, or can it be scaled down to provide value in some small capacity? And again, mentioned in a previous video, maybe it's not the initial market that you're thinking of. Maybe your total end view market is grocery store customers, right? Let's just say that. But maybe it turns out to be someone adjacent. Maybe it's farmers markets, or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's some other smaller group. Maybe it's small offices that might have it. I don't even know what your solution is, but this might be something to look into. So that is a way to think about it. So more MVP examples. I'll just kind of toggle through these quickly. You can pause the video, but one of my favorite ones is Zappos on here. So Zappos is great. So initially when Zappos gets started, they didn't build a website. They didn't have a crazy, at least the website that they have today, they didn't have 10,000 people working for them, all kinds of crap like that. It was one dude who was curious about selling shoes online. So what did he do? He went down to a shoe store and said, hey, can I take pictures of your shoes? I'm going to sell shoes online. And if I sell the shoes online, I promise I'll buy them from here, right? That seemed totally reasonable to that particular shoe store owner, right? For many other shoe stores, they may have said no, but no means next, right? No means next. Go to the next person. So what he did was he put up a very, very simple kind of almost like landing page-ish kind of thing where people could go through and find pictures of shoes that they liked, order the size, and send it in, right? And that sending it in wasn't anything crazy. It was really just a small email that he got sent personally on the back end. So there was no software, there was no inventory, there was no warehouses. It was just a guy running into a store, but it looked like it was professional for people to purchase. And so that's how it all got started. People started buying shoes online, and then it started getting more complicated and grew organically, and then was able to send out. And that's where also they came up with all these things that were on the customer service side that really made them stand out. So I think it was 360-day returns on shoes, people spending a lot of time on the phone and being willing to do that, patience on the phone, people getting sent flowers when people died. That's the reason they missed getting their shoes sent in. All of those little details came out later. That's what they're known for now. But it started off with one dude, a shoe store, and a website. So what is it about MVPs? MVPs help you learn quickly. It helps you determine if you're creating value to your customers, right? You can understand and think you're going to create value for your customers up until the point where you actually give them something, or when you actually try to sell them something. Then that's a kind of a precipice you're crossing. It focuses on early adopters. So when we think about that niche customer base, who's that small customer base that you're trying to help and address first? Focus on them. Again, if you're trying to tackle the world is not going to accept your first MVP. It's not perfect enough for them. Versus this small group, they have enough of a need that they're willing to get it solved, and they're willing to pay to get it solved. The trick is to figure out what is minimal. That's the hard part. So people, again, they want to build a cathedral, and then they want to take it a brick at a time rather than building a tent that solves and serves the same purpose first. It helps you to scale something that you know works, right? And the important part is knowing that it works, because you sent out the MVP to the real world, you've gotten feedback, and people say it works, right? And if it doesn't work, that's your opportunity to fix and modify and improve. and then it helps you to build something that you don't think works, right? So again, the people who stay in their garage or stay huddled in a room and build something all the time and don't communicate with people, they end up building stuff that puts them at risk for people not liking it. Are there people who've built stuff in the garage that have done well? Sure. That's fine. I will give you that. However, the number of them I'm willing to bet is very low. And also, I can't imagine what the stress feels like when you're bringing your thing to market. So with smokescreen MVPs, they must have measurable outcomes. It's important with anything that you're doing, all of the assumption testing, all of the building that you do, to be making sure that there's something measurable about it. The reason being is that if you can't measure it, you can't really know it as much as you could. So this is to help give some hard numbers and to put some firm edges on things. So remember, what are you trying to find out? How will you know if you found it out? So going back to those test cards, so the test cards and the learning cards that you've been sent digitally. So what do you know? So low ask, right? So that low calorie ask would be an email, or a high calorie ask would be a survey, right? Again, we try to push people away from surveys, but those are examples of something that's higher ask. The reason an email is low is you're just asking for their email. They're just putting in that many strings of letters and numbers. A survey, you're asking them to actually do something or provide you with more information, and surveys can take a long time. Having them sign up for a beta, doing a download, right? Clicking a button to download that software to increase their usage or to actually use it in the first place, or to have them actually pay money, right? Those are opportunities for people to show in some way that they're interested or that they're not interested. Smokescreens and MVPs help you test and refine your value proposition and better define your segment. Again, who's the person with the most need? Are you sure you're right? Are you sure you have the correct, proper alignment between their customer needs and your value that you're providing? Is that the case? So here's a cycle that you might apply for your MVP cycle. Again, this is somewhat part of customer discovery, right? So you're going out, you're testing something, you're going to execute, right? You're going to run a test, you're going to send out your MVP, you're going to get feedback, you're going to collect that feedback, and then you're going to process that data. There's an important part about processing the data and looking at it. If you collect all the data and don't actually spend any time to look at it and try to look at it, it's a waste of time for you and for your customer. So here are some things you might try in the future. So the smoke screen, right? So we just talked about that. That might look like a landing page. That might look like a Frankenstein, Wizard of Oz, or a concierge. So, or even crowdfunding. So going through these. So a landing page is oftentimes the smoke screen. So where people just go and they put in their email, or it's a low calorie ask you're getting from them. That's the first place. The Frankenstein is actually for an MVP. So that is an opportunity for you to cobble together off the shelf parts to create value for somebody. You're taking, a gas powered motor and a knife, a kitchen knife, and you're making your automatic bread slicer, right? You're kind of whipping things together to make sure it works. It's not perfect, but it still generates value for your customer, whoever that is. The Wizard of Oz, love this one. So the Wizard of Oz is oftentimes a product that looks like it's automated, right? So there's a face, there's a wall that customers interact with. This might be like an ATM front, or oftentimes it's for software. But what happens is you actually manually do everything on the back end. You haven't created any automated software, but it looks and feels as though it's automated. So they'll get an email later saying, hey, this is all your information that you're looking for. An ATM is not that hard to fake, right? If someone types in boop, boop, 20, you just look at what they typed in and you can put out the $20, right? That is a way to kind of test and see how this thing works. Concierge is another form of an MVP that's really great. So what this is basically you intentionally and them, your customer knowingly, that you are doing the work for them. Instead of having this wall where it's all automated and it looks like it's automated, you're intentionally doing this for them. So we had a team that was doing financial stuff. They were trying to create financial planning for college students who had student debt. And instead of doing a Wizard of Oz thing where students would put it in, and, put in their information and all this stuff, and they would look automated, what they did was they sat down with the students, provided this concierge service that would walk them through and create a customized plan for them. Why that's useful is it allows them to go through the steps of things that they, one, can automate, and knowing the things that they can't automate, and then also building up that rapport and working out the kinks and bugs with that group first, so they can understand where are some potential pain points or friction points that we can eliminate or reduce along the path of our customers' experience. Finally, crowdfunding. This kind of go in between or go back and forth about, like, yes, you could potentially do this for a smokescreen or even honestly for an MVP, the idea that you're promising this thing. However, there is the financial component that makes it a little bit difficult. So if you're trying to use it as a smokescreen, you're getting money involved, which could be potentially, there might be some legal ramifications about that. You're promising something, right? You're promising this will be delivered in this capacity. And you, at this point, you might not know if you can deliver or promise those things. So avoid over promising and under delivering. Instead, do the opposite. Under promise, over deliver. And with money and crowdfunding, it might be difficult unless you're ready to go. But even then, at that point, if you're ready to go and you're ready to sell, then perhaps you should be doing that ahead of time. Anyway, finally, what we'll talk about is the business model canvas. We're going to go through this relatively quickly. So the business model canvas is a series of guesses of what you think people want, why, what they pay, and how they might deliver your solution. This is essentially a quick and dirty business plan, but it allows for you the flexibility to, one, remove and put things in, try things out, and this is in your Miro board. So you should be trying this out for the next time we meet. So looking at it, trying to assemble what are the different components. So it's split into two main-ish sections. So on the left are things that are basically related to what you need to do as a company and what will cost money, essentially. So that's kind of the back end thing. And oftentimes your customers may not even care about that. That is something on the back end that you need to figure out, the things you need to plug in to make sure all this can work. And on the right is what you do to whom and why and how you make money. That tends to be more customer facing and oftentimes about what more customers care about, right? Customers don't necessarily care about what it costs you to make the product. They care about how much it costs them to get the product. So that's the revenue stream section there. And that's why those are kind of split in the half. The value proposition is split in half in some capacity because you're delivering value to somebody else, but you need to make sure that you can deliver that value in the way that you're promising it. So first off, starting with customer segments. So customer segments, who are they, right? Who are they? What do they care about? This is the persona. You kind of plug in your persona here and different value props for each different segment. So if you have multiple people, if you're working with a 2 or 3 part model, so let's say you are selling to, if you're Amazon is a great simple example. You have sellers that use your platform and then you have users that buy off your platform, right? Understanding the value proposition for either of those groups is going to be very, very important. You should write one for each. Your channels, the channels are how you connect with them. So what are the ways that you communicate? That's really important to understand. So is it Facebook? Is it social media? Is it print journalism? Is it calling off the rooftop at midnight? Who knows? But it's based on what your customer is. Customer relationships. Oh, these are important. So customer relationships, what is your relationship with them? Right? So are you developing a community? Is this transactional? Is this something where people can come back? Think about, okay, great product. So great product example would be like Lay's potato chips. Do people feel like they're a part of a community with Lay's? Maybe, but probably not. It's almost entirely transactional. They go to the grocery store, they buy the product, and they leave. They probably have more of a close relationship with their grocery store than they do with the actual product they're purchasing. They don't have contact with anybody likely from the company. They just go and purchase the product. So versus think about Zappos model where you can call, you have a long-term relationship and they want to build that thing so you can call back and order your shoes the next time instead of going to your local shoe store. Revenue streams are just thinking about the ways that money comes in, but this also leads you to start thinking about the value-based pricing or the cost-based pricing that you might consider. When we talk about pricing, thinking about cost-based or value-based are the two main schools of thought. Cost-based is essentially saying, all right, it cost me $100 to buy it or to build it, right? And I want to put 20% on top of that, whatever, or 80%, whatever. And then you say, well, if it's 80%, then my product will be $180. Okay. Value-based pricing is understanding the value you generate for your customer. So ice is more valuable in the desert than it is in the Arctic, right? Because of proximity, because of value or the availability of something. So thinking about that. So what is the value you bring to your customer? And that'll help be understood here in this revenue stream. What is the value you're bringing? This should be pulled from your value proposition and put into revenue stream. So what is the value you're providing? How is that tangibly provided to your customer? What does it cost you? And then also, how are you generating? Is it a subscription format? Is it a one-time offer, like one-time purchasing thing? Is it something where it's add-ons, right? They buy on stuff as they go. Think about different ways. Or is it supplemental products, right? So going back to a very early example of Rent the Runway. They had multiple revenue streams. So one was they were renting out that service, they're renting out the dresses to people. But then they also had additional ones of additional accessories, so wrist watches or bracelets or whatever, and then also insurance to cover all of those things. Those are multiple revenue streams that can be discovered through your customer discovery. And then finally, it's important to understand, like, from your customer discovery, what are they willing to pay? How is this working for them? Can they pay? What is the preferred method that they might be able to go through? So customer discovery will help inform all of these things. Activities. So what are the most important things you need to do? So for example, like production consulting. So literally, what are the steps that need to happen for you to make this product or service a reality? What are the things that need to happen on the back end? What are the things that need to happen in the front end? Is it making phone calls? Is it literally building the thing? Whatever it might be, but just taking stock of the whole process. Resources. This is pretty straightforward. What do you need to do this? So financial, physical, intellectual property, human capital, the different types of capital that you might require to make this thing happen. What are the inputs? Let's pretend you're baking a cake. This is a simple example. You need flour, salt, sugar, whatever, water, eggs, etc., oil, all of those things. So being aware of what are those ingredients that you need to put into this to make the high value cake that it is. Partners are, it's important to think about, partners are different things than customer relationships. The partners are people that you work with to help make this happen. So they might be suppliers, they might be someone who provides some kind of service along the way or insurance, but these are people that you pull something from, either a resource or a service, to make this thing happen. So think about AWS or something might be a good example. You might have a software, but you need to host it somewhere. And unless you're going to build your own servers, you're probably going to go need to work with someone else who does that. So that would be an example of potential. So finally, what you can do with this business model canvas is then you can use some of the stuff that you've done already. So looking at your mirror board, your competitive analysis, your customer segments, your customer information or characteristics, your market opportunities, all those things is where you can start plugging this in to try to figure out more about it. So competitive analysis, right? By looking at your competition, understanding the value you bring, but then looking at what some people might be complaining about or not enjoying, you might be able to modify things. So for example, you might have a very similar product to somebody else, but if you do a little bit more discovery, you might find out that they really hate the customer relationship. Maybe it's too transactional, or maybe it's not transactional enough. Maybe they're tired of having conversation. They just want to get in and out. Okay, that's an opportunity for you to redefine one of those segments. And that's an opportunity for you to kind of leg up on your competition by being able to plug in different things, different channels, right? How are you communicating? Let's say you are a bank that's making loans. Most banks might be using one type of channel to communicate with people. If you try the next, you might be targeting a whole new segment that they're missing. Again, opportunities are everywhere. Market opportunity. So what's great about this market opportunity, once you finish the BMC, you can plug in the market opportunity. So what is the total addressable market that there's out there? What is the market that you can actually capture? And then taking those numbers and plugging it in. How much money do you make? And are you able to actually make money? Does it have a break-even point where after a certain number of users, it starts making money, or do you start making money immediately? How does that work out? Your cost should be lower than what you actually take in for money, right? Your profits. That's how many businesses work. But it's easier said than done, much easier said than done. And so navigating this can be very, very difficult. So taking your time and plugging things in will be important. One thing to remember is that a BMC is a living, breathing document in many ways, that you can go back to it and make adjustments and changes. It will modify as your company changes too. So that's something to keep thinking about. This is not a set in stone. This is not like a business plan where you're not supposed to change it, I guess. This is an opportunity for you to grow with it. So think about that. So thank you for watching. This is the last video. I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday night. We will be talking about all the things we talked about before in this presentation, and we'll be wrapping it up and getting some feedback about the experience, and then talking about your next steps as you move forward, as you pass through and finish the Idea Test Lab. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.